Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another tier list. Today we're going to be ranking the Pahkitew Island characters based on how hard they are to write for. Are you excited? I'm really excited. This is the third generation that we're doing. We've done the Island cast and the Revenge of the Island cast previously, and we're going to rank them all based on how hard they are to write in a fanfiction. So right off the bat, S tier just means easiest to write for, and D tier will be hardest to write for, but not impossible, because no character is impossible to write for. And obviously, just to clarify, by writing for, I mean writing them well as your finalist or winner character. So they make the full season run, and, I read a good amount of Total Drama fanfiction in my day and age, so hopefully this should be fun. And if you like this, then yeah, we'll do the Gen 4 cast, the reboot cast next. So right off the bat, we have one of the only characters I would say is easier to write for, Jasmine. I feel like you could put her in the other three casts, the Island, Revenge, or Reboot cast, and she'd probably be fine. Like, she's the most normal of the cast. She's a survivalist who's Australian and very tall, but for the most part, that's surprisingly normal for this cast. I think that she has a lot of good interactions without making herself be a caricature. Obviously, she has a relationship with Shawn. You have the small, underrated friendship with Sammy. She's, one of the only voice of reasons. She's the only voice of reason for Sammy, actually, now that I think about it. Or Sammy, whatever you want to call her. I think Jasmine is pretty easy to write for because you don't really need set interactions. I think what I've realized upon writing the Pahkitew Island characters is because a lot of them don't have set interactions with each other, that makes it easier to write for with other casts, if that makes sense, right? Like, obviously, if you are writing, let's say, Courtney will most likely need to bounce off of Duncan or Gwen. Not always, of course, but those are her main interactions, and maybe Harold as well. It's Harold in there as well. The Pahkitew Island characters don't really need that. Like, you can write, for example, Scarlet without Max, or, what else we got? I don't know, I'm looking at this, there's really not, or Sky without Dave, even, or Dave without Sky, maybe, would be the better one. So because of that, you don't, need, okay, Amy and Sammy being maybe the only exception, but we'll get there when we get there. Jasmine, I feel like is pretty easy to write for. She's a strong survivalist character, she's good at challenges, she has a good head on her shoulders, I don't know, easy to write for. She could easily be a protagonist character, and honestly, if Pahkitew Island ever got, another season, which it never will now, but if Total Drama continued past 2015, I could see a universe where Jasmine probably is a finalist or even a winner character. I think she actually has a cameo in Total Drama Rama, the teenage version of her, not there's no baby version of Jasmine. I think there was an episode where where Chris reenacted Total Drama, and Alejandro, Heather, and Jasmine showed up. So it's kind of a weird choice, but I guess that shows that even back then when there was still hope, people, the creators did somewhat care about Jasmine. Anyway, next we have Scarlet, and Scarlet has always been a character I feel like that's pretty hard to write for. My fanfiction includes her, and she's not an early boot, spoilers. Instead, she's there to reform herself. This is not a plug for my fanfic, by the way. But I can imagine that if you're doing a post-canon story, it's kind of hard to justify why Scarlet is back, why Chris would let her back in after she tried to kill everyone. But I think Scarlet is a very fun antagonist type because, if this is a post-canon story, everyone knows she's evil, right? They know what she's capable of. They're probably scared of her. And I think that can have a fun dichotomy. Maybe she's like, hey, I'm not that scary. I want to win this time. I'm not going to, I want to win the million. If I'm not allowed to go crazy, then sure, I'll try to play the game. I'll try to be maybe not a better person, but I'll try to act like a better person. I think that's so fun. But on the other hand, I don't know how easy it is to write for her. One of my favorite things reading, shuffled fanfictions where the casts are introduced earlier is Scarlet is always so fun because you have the dramatic irony of she's evil, right? I think Total Shuffled Island by Fangren, I believe their name is, had it so that the first spoilers, but the first season Scarlet doesn't ever reveal herself, but there are hints here and there, and then in the second season, that's when Scarlet reveals her evil persona, and it's super fun, and she's still antagonistic, she's still villainous. Even before the reveal, you could tell that she was a bit crafty, working with Max, she's willing to play dirty here and there, nothing too over the top, but still able to do that. So because of that, I feel like Scarlet is so fun. She's a very underrated character to use. I have so much fun writing her. A lot of people, not to glaze my own story, but a lot of people say that Scarlet is, one of the more fun characters, and it's just, I don't know, it's that dichotomy of, like, she's so evil, but again, I feel like she can bounce off a lot of characters. And by the way, I think I should add another tier, because I think the other tier list had 6 tiers, right? That was, the other tier list had 6 tiers, didn't they? Something like that. Ooh. Gotta change the colors. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on Scarlet. Next, we have Topher. Topher, right off the bat, he really does not have any interactions with anyone outside of Chris. There's a small rivalry with Scarlet, but, you know, he's like a fan wannabe, kind of like Sierra. Well, no, he's a fan like Sierra, but he's more of a wannabe who wants Chris's job, right? So maybe you could be like, oh, he's a fake fan. He doesn't actually really care about Total Drama itself. He just wants to host for it. It's a little awkward. The color's gonna be a little awkward. But, like, again, it's another fun, like, villainous character. And I feel like, I think Pahkitew has the benefit of only having 1 season. So you can really study their screen time and get the gist of the characters. I feel like Island, even though you probably know them better because those seasons are more rewatchable, they're more iconic, you know, they compete in 3, some of them 4 seasons, so it's a lot of, like, content to really try to minimize into your own story, right? These guys, they only get 13 episodes, so, you know, some of them not even that. So it's pretty easy to, like, get the gist of them and expand on it in the future. So, I don't know, it's the unexpected benefit of only having a short season to work off of, right? But yeah, Topher, oh man, I don't know, I feel like, even though he doesn't have many interactions, and that can be a downside, because it's like, how is Topher gonna interact with Sugar? How is Topher interacting with Sky? Like, I don't really know. Like, why is he back? Why did Chris let him back? What is his goal now that, like, he doesn't want to take over the show? Maybe he can take over the show a second time, and that's kind of boring if you do that again, right? In your post-canon fix. I don't know. I feel like Topher is an interesting character. I'm going to put him in Scarlet with A, just because I feel like this is a fun, like, antagonistic archetype who might not be the main villain, but, like, he's just a fun person who brings conflict, right? Because he's so self-centered, maybe he learns to overcome it, or maybe he doubles down and he's worse. Shawn is interesting because I feel like, you know, the entire season of Pahkitew was really building up to 2 episodes for Shawn. The one where he fights the robot Chris's, which was like a mini zombie army, and the food episode where the other contestants were kind of like zombies. Like, the whole zombie gimmick was included to build up to those moments where he, like, you know, fights them and stuff. I feel like you shouldn't put yourself in a box where you have to force yourself to put a zombie thing, because Shawn's main thing is that he's good against zombies, right? But he's also, like, a nice and positive character, even if his priorities are a little skewed. Obviously, he wants, like, to go in a safe bunker, rather than just be a normal person. Like I mentioned previously, there are really not a lot of just objectively nice male characters. Like, there's really not a lot, if you think about it. There's a reason why none of the heroes in All-Stars were the OG men, right? Shawn is, like, one of the very, like, Brick, Sam, Owen, like, Shawn. They're, like, the only ones off the top of my head of the first 3 casts that are just objectively just nice, right? So that can be fun, but I don't know, I feel like, what is Shawn without the zombie stuff? It's a bit hard, I feel, because you would need to flesh him out, give him another reason. It also doesn't help that he is one of those characters that kind of already won his previous season, right? Are you going to have him be a finalist or win again? Like, what are you going to do there? That being said, he does have a pretty interesting relationship with Jasmine. There was a little bit of conflict in the finale. Maybe they're better off, maybe they're a cute couple, maybe things happened and, you know, there's conflict in paradise. Who knows? I don't know, I'll put Shawn in, like, C, because, like, you know, he's not as gimmicky as some of the later characters. I just realized we're going off of, like, you know, we're starting off pretty, you know, with a okay, I'm not gonna say grounded, but, like, you know, pre-reveal Scarlet, you know, Topher kind of, Jasmine, you know, these are, like, the less gimmicky characters, and, you know, we're starting to get up there in terms of the characters' gimmicks. Next up, we have Leonard. I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't know how you would write for Leonard. I'm gonna be so honest. Maybe you'd be like, oh, I put on this wizard thing because I got bullied in school, you know, the usual angsty tragedy, which could work. That could be fun. To do a deconstruction of Leonard. But I don't know. He's only in 2 episodes, and also 1 episode, or no, he's in 2 episodes of Pahkitew and 2 episodes of the Ronkius Race. He's just kind of a dweeby wizard. I'm really happy he was in the Ronkius Race, by the way. That was kind of unexpected. I remember at the time, I was like, wow, that's so cool. We have Gen 1 and Gen 3, and then he gets, you know, first boot. But still, Leonard's great for comedy. It's a case where, like, unlike someone like Owen or Tyler, where a lot of the comedy is more physical, so you don't really have that in a written medium, like a fanfiction, you know, a lot of the spells stuff and the D&D references, you can have fun with that. And unlike Shawn, where, you know, again, Shawn's thing was, like, really building up to this, Leonard didn't really have that. You could have, like, a D&D challenge, like a virtual reality challenge. I don't know. I'm gonna say he's easier to write than Shawn. I don't think so. I'm gonna put him lower than Shawn, even though, like, there is, I don't like this word, but there's potential to Leonard. I don't know. Like, he's such a gimmicky, one-note sort of, like, joke character. Like, he's really the ultimate joke character out of everyone, so it's like, I don't know, man. We'll put him in D. Next up, we have Rodney, and Rodney's, like, interesting because he's very gimmicky. He just likes all the girls that he falls into, but it's gimmicky with promise. You could do a story, why is he like this to the girls? Maybe the girl's like, hey, Rodney, I don't like this. That's weird, you know? Maybe he confesses something. Maybe a girl actually does like him. This is another instance of, like, a Cody situation where maybe in the first season he was more gimmicky, but in the future you really expound on it. Who knows? I don't know. I feel like, again, man, it's so weird because, like, these characters only have a single season worth of, like, content. Unlike, you know, the previous gens where, you know, a majority of them got more than one season. These guys are, like, they're one and done. Where am I going to put Rodney? How would you write Rodney? I don't know. I think because of the whole thing with girls, like, that does give him a slight edge over someone who's just kind of a joke character like Leonard. I'm going to put him here. Like, he's, like, nice as well, so it's like, that's good. You can use them as, like, your hero. I don't know. I feel like Rodney's really unpopular, but I don't know. I have a soft spot for him. He's kind of funny. But, like, man, it's also because he didn't really overstay his welcome. He was only in 4 episodes. He got eliminated before it could get old, and you could argue that it got pretty old. I don't know. Sugar is, like, interesting because she's, like, villainous and stuff, right? Like, she's kind of a villain. And, you know, it's another, like, sort of outdated joke, like Honey Boo Boo and that stuff. That was, like, funny and, like, even like, that was funny in, like, 2011, 2012. Even, like, 2014 when Pahkitew, like, aired, it was already a little out of date. But now it's, like, oof. Now, obviously, you know, she's just country bumpkin, you know. So that's funny-ish, but, like, I don't know. I feel like she's one of those characters where it's like, if Pahkitew ever got a second season, she would definitely be, like, one of the early boots and probably never do well again, right? Unless they really wanted to be subversive and, like, expound on Sugar, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, she is a villain. Okay, she's not a villain, but she's, like, an antagonistic character. It's hard. Okay, Pahkitew doesn't have, like, a set villain. Like, it jumps back and forth between, like, Amy, Sugar, Scarlet. You could argue Dave, right? Max is, like, the joke villain, but, like, yeah. Oh, man. Where do we put Sugar? I'm gonna say, like, I've read some fanfic which, like, they surprisingly develop Sugar, and it is surprising. Like, you know, Fangren's Total Shuffled series is, like, the prime example. I'm gonna say, like, maybe C? I'm gonna say C because I feel like it's very easy to mess Sugar up. I feel like it's very easy to just make her really annoying. Like, she's already, like, a lot of people would argue that, like, yeah, a lot of the gimmicky characters, they only last a few episodes, but Sugar lasts pretty much the whole season, right? Which can be a detriment towards your writing and your enjoyment of the season. Ella is interesting. I don't know where I would rank Ella, to be honest. Where would I rank Ella? Ella sings, and that's kind of a little harder to write for in a written medium. So right off the bat, not great. She's kind of like a Delulu Disney princess, which is, like, they can be fun. I think people would argue that, no offense to Fangren, but in the Total Shuffled series, Ella was probably one of the more annoying characters because, you know, if you want to make her go far, it's like, you know, she's just kind of Delulu and semi-positive, but also just, like, that can be frustrating because she's in her own little world. Where would I put Ella? I don't know. I feel like that'd be fun to write for, like, oh, maybe Ella learns the real world, but, like, you know, this whole tier list thing that I'm doing, it's like, I'm trying to capture the essence of the character, and it's like, for a lot of these characters, if you try to deconstruct their archetype, then it's not really the essence of the character anymore, right? So, I don't know, it's very, very subjective tier list, but, like, man, where do I put Ella? This is so hard. I'm gonna say, like, C tier. I'm just gonna put her here. I feel like I'm kind of defaulting to C at this point, but I'm gonna say C, because, like, yeah, there's stuff you can do with Ella, but, like, Oh man, I think relatively I'm gonna have to put Shawn, Rodney, and Sugar here. I have to put Ella and C. I can't justify putting them in the same tier, but I can't justify. I don't think she's as hard to write for as Leonard, but I can't put her in the same tier as Shawn, Rodney, and Sugar. I feel like these three, like, there's a certain gravitas to them, but Ella is just so like the Lulu, I guess. Next we have Max, and Max is like comic relief, and like comic relief characters can do well, right? Owen won a season, Wayne won a season, right? Like you can just have him not have any strategy or whatsoever and just be a goofball who's evil and like his plans surprisingly work, and that could be fun. I don't think there's a lot of like depth to him, and I feel like he's not a character where it's like you have to be structured with your comedy. I feel like you just make him do dumb stuff and it's funny, right? I feel like Max is such an over-the-top character that, like, in my opinion, he's not very annoying, but I feel like a lot, in my opinion, like, these characters aren't annoying. But I can imagine that for a majority of the viewers, some of these characters can get on your nerves. I think my bias is showing because, like, I grew up with, like, the middle era of Total Drama. That's when I really joined and was a fan, was the ROTI All-Stars, Pahkitew Redonkulous era. I feel like a lot of people... No, I feel like that's just, our own personal biases towards when we grew up. Like, the people who grew up with the first 3 seasons have a soft spot for them, and the people that grew up with the reboot have a soft spot for those seasons. Me, I'll go to bat for my Gen 2 and Gen 3 cast. Anyway, Max, oh man. Time to evil! Do we put him in... I don't know, I feel like... It's harder to make... Okay, the justification for why I'm putting Max in B tier is because I feel like there's not a lot of, like, oh, the show gave reasons to, like, deconstruct the character, right? With Shawn, I feel like when he's put up against Jasmine, you have that. With Rodney, it's just, like, the girls don't really object. Maybe just have one of the girls object towards Rodney. With Sugar, you have, she failed the Pahkitew Island, so like maybe she comes back with vengeance, maybe she comes back with insecurities. Max, I feel like the show doesn't give you an outlet to be like, oh, Max, he's an outcast, he's socially inept and lonely or whatever. But I feel like maybe you could have him reflect, like he saw Scarlet and now he's like reeling in, and that could be fun. I don't know. There's some promise with Max, I think. I don't know. This is like one of the hardest to rank. Yeah, by the way, he has purple hair. That's still so weird. Why does he have purple hair? That's so random. He's like an anime character. Okay, next up we have Sammy, and in my opinion, Sammy is probably the easiest character to write for in anything ever. I feel like you just naturally feel bad for her because of how she was treated by Amy. That immediately you have that benefit. That even if you write her poorly, you still feel bad for her. You really have to go out of your way to make her the most Mary Sue character of all time, to make her unlikable. The show even gives you, like, the hint of an arc, kind of like what happened with Sadie when Katie got eliminated, but the show never really developed it. There's so many avenues where Sammy gets, like, an independence arc, where she proves herself she's more than just her sister, and the show really, delves into her insecurities for life over being treated as the inferior sister, and maybe she gets mad. It's like, you people, what do you want from me? I don't know. Like, there's so many avenues that make her this interesting, like, female protagonist type, and the show doesn't do it. But for you fanfic writers, boom, there you go. Now, to be fair, that's very stereotypical, I feel. I feel like a majority of fanfics that include the Pahkitew characters, which isn't a lot compared to Gen 1 and Gen 4, will probably have Sammy go far and be a character that's very rootable. And because of that, I don't know, I feel like it's very hard to mess up Sammy, right? You don't even need Amy in your story, in my opinion. You could have a season where Sammy is without Amy, and it's still fun, right? You don't need Amy. Amy, on the other hand, Amy, I don't know, like, I feel like you can have Sammy without Amy, but I don't know if you can have Amy without Sammy. Like, yeah, she's just kind of mean girl, bossy, antagonistic, usually to Sammy, but, maybe she's a diva that, like, she's mean to everyone else, and people are like, hey, you're not very nice, you're mistreating your sister. But also, the cast of Pahkitew saw that, and they didn't really care. The cast of Pahkitew didn't really care, but again, the cast of Pahkitew were kind of, cartoony caricatures. So, man. I feel like with Scarlet and Topher, there's a small amount of depth that justify them in A tier. I feel like Amy doesn't have that. kind of have to put her in B tier because it's like, it's in the same level as these folk. Like, there's stuff you can do, but you would have to expand beyond what you were given in the actual show, right, in canon. Sky is another character. No, okay, I said Jasmine's the most normal. No, Sky's probably the most normal. She's an Olympian. Adventure camp. And, like, she came here to win, and some stuff happened with Dave and her boyfriend, Keith. And there's some drama. It's like, did Sky do the right thing? You know? Again, Sky is one of those characters where you could put her in any of the other gens, and she'd probably, like, fit just fine. Here she stands out because she's so normal, and I don't know, I feel like that's pretty easy to write for her. She's another character that's kind of like, you know, I feel like she's in that bubble with, like, you know, Bridget and, like, Zoe and Priya, where they're, like, you know, kind of like, you know, the nice girls. I wouldn't say she's boring. I feel like, in my personal opinion, I feel like Sky is the most interesting out of those ones because you have some stuff beyond that with, like, the Olympics and, like, you know, her boyfriend, maybe how she handles boys like Dave, maybe how she's recovering past that, you know, now that if you're doing a post-canon story, like, what's she doing after Pahkitew, like, what did she learn from that season? I don't know, I feel like I'd put her here, maybe under Jasmine, but, like, I feel like she's, yeah, like, easy to write for. I feel like you can capture her pretty darn well. Then again, she already won a season, so it's like, this is the tier list where it's like you're writing for these characters being finalists, and it's like, I feel like you can do that. I feel like you just say, hey, oh, Sky got second place, she lost to Shawn, she's, like, you know, embarrassed. Now she's here to prove herself, and probably wouldn't mind, you know? Yeah, she would make, like, you know, finals 2 seasons in a row, but, like, that's fine, right? Yeah, like, yeah, this is her, not that she needs redemption, but, like, this is her time to show that she's learned from her mistakes and isn't here to be treated like crap anymore. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. Okay, Beardo is kind of like B. It's like, yeah, sound effects thing. It's like, okay. Like, at least B, you can have the inner monologues. And, like, yeah, you can have that with Beardo, but the main gimmick is that he makes sound effects, and you can't really do that in a fanfic. He's the hardest to write for. This tier was reserved for Beardo. I call him Beardo because that's what he calls himself in the audition tape. But, yeah, I don't think he's impossible. But, yeah, good luck making this guy your winner character. Like, my goodness. What do you even go from here? There's, like, nothing to talk about. At least B is, like, crafty and has showed a little bit of promise. This guy was, like, literally nothing. His audition tape was, like, it's like, okay. Yeah, his audition tape, you could maybe work off of that. But for the most part, it's like, come on. What are we doing? And lastly, we have Dave. Dave is a character that I feel like you need to have some level of experience. Like, you... Okay. I feel like with Dave, you need a level of self-awareness because he's so whiny. He's like a germaphobe. He's a very unlikable character, but also you kind of feel bad for him because it's like, I mean, yeah, he's like, you know, just like everyone, he's a teenager. He's going through his own stuff. He's a germaphobe. He's dealt a pretty bad hand, but he's handling it really poorly. It's just a lot of miscommunication, a handful of people say he's like, you know, an incel. I don't know if I'd go that far, but, you know, he's kind of a loser. And you know, maybe you feel bad for him. Maybe you demonize him. There've been a lot of fanfics where Dave is kind of villainized and demonized to an awful extent where he's just a bad person. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really like Dave as a character, but, you know, I feel like if he is going to be your winner, you need to prove something. You know, you need to have a plan as to how you're going to portray this guy. Like, is he going to have trouble with girls? Is he reeling over Sky? Did he find a new girl and he's still kind of handling it the wrong way, being a little creepy about it? Maybe not creepy. Creepy's not the wrong word, but clingy. Maybe he learns. Maybe it's a Pyrrhic. Is that how you pronounce it? Pyrrhic? A very underwhelming victory where he wins, but no one cares. He's like, yes, I won. I proved it to everyone. Everyone's like, we're not proud of you, Dave. We're not happy with you. I don't know. I feel like Dave is I'm going to put Dave in A tier. Okay, I would put Dave in A tier. But, like, at the same time, because, like, I feel like he's, like, easier to write than these guys, but I feel like he's more challenging than Scarlet and Topher. Okay, okay, we'll just do this. I feel like, yeah, I feel like, Dave getting a B tier all to himself makes sense, right? I feel like there's a bit more promise than these goobers, but he's not nearly as easy that I would imagine writing Scarlet and Topher would be. Because, like, there is fun stuff you can do with Dave. Fun story about him learning the consequences of his actions. Maybe he doubles down on his villainy. Maybe he gets better. Who knows? But at the same token, I've read a lot of stories that they just don't like Dave, and it's very obvious he's just super unlikable. Who knows? Maybe I need to read more stories. Let me know if you have any good recommendations for Pahkitew stories, because I really don't see a whole lot. But whenever I do, I'm happy, because, you know, I don't hate this cast. So yeah, here's my tier list. It's a bit more confused and rambly than the other ones, because, you know, it's a little harder to talk about this cast. But yeah, how easy and hard they are to write for. Thank you all for watching, and make sure you subscribe for more. Goodbye.